So good morning, everyone. So my name is Yanesh Naidoo, as introduced earlier. I am one of the owners of a company called Gendermark Automation, and I just wanted to give you guys a bit of a chat about our take on some opportunities there are in the so-called fourth industrial revolution. And how I want to do that is I want to sort of give you a company overview of where we are, what we do, and what we think the future might look like, and how we are trying to transform our business in this 4IR space. So I'll just kick off with a quick overview and a summary of what we do. So we design and build production lines. We focus on the automotive industry, and even within the automotive industry we focus on two main areas. So one is what we call powertrain, the other one is catalytic converters. So I'll show you a quick video of a typical production line that we design and build. Check if the video works. So this is a video of a differential assembly line. It is the video is taken on our shop floor, so everything you see there is one of our products that we design and build. This current production line is actually running in the USA, delivered about 2 years ago now. And it builds differentials for GM. So everything that you see in the video is again designed and built by us, from the conceptual design, final mechanical design, electrical design, manufacture, the assembly of it, and obviously the programming of the production line to actually make it produce parts. The other side of our business is also centered around assembly systems, but focused on the catalytic converter world. So this is a typical catalytic converter assembly line that's designed and built by us for a customer in the Netherlands. So you can see that the key point on this production line is that there's no people on it. It's completely autonomous. The parts arrive on automated vehicles, they get assembled completely autonomously, and the completed part gets put on another automated vehicle and sent to the next production process. So obviously for the Netherlands it makes a lot of sense because they are trying to get rid of workers on the production line because of the cost of labor. So just to show the capabilities that we've learned over the last couple of years to deliver production lines from a South African perspective, and also production lines that meet European requirements, as you can see in the video. I'll just forward it along to just give you an idea of the size of the line. So this machine that the robot is placing the part in there right now is what we call a shrinker, and that basically compresses the stainless steel can down of the catalytic converter around 10 to 12 millimeters in size, to make sure that the catalytic converter on the inside is actually stable throughout the life of the car, or in this case a truck. So obviously the temperatures are really high, so sometimes up to 800-900 degrees, and then down to minus 40 degrees when it's sitting in a cold climate. So that's the typical product that we would design and build, and we've been doing that for a number of years now. Really been successful in it, I'd say for the last 7 or 8 years, and we've been asking ourselves a lot of questions about what next. There's the so-called fourth industrial revolution, and we obviously want to continue to grow our business, and what are the opportunities around this 4IR space. So the next product line that we want to introduce into our business is what we call digital services, and that's what I want to focus the second part of the presentation on, what's next for us. But before I get to that, a little bit more information about our company. We are a South African company, so Quinton, Siegfried, Graham and myself, we're the 4 owners of the company. Quinton's the guy that started it a good almost 30 years ago now. So we have a number of offices in different locations in the world. So our head office is in South Africa, PE, where we have about 330 people working for us. 5 years ago we started a business in India. There we anticipated a massive growth for the middle class in India, because obviously it was the next sleeping giant after China, and when you have a massive growth in middle class, people want to buy cars, and so we expected a massive growth in automotive industry 5 or 6 years ago, and fortunately for us it's actually materialized. The other big driver for our decision in India is centered around emissions. So India are transforming their emission regulations quite strictly and really fast, which means that they need more catalytic converters. It's another reason why we decided to pick India. The obvious choice was to go and set up shop in China, but we had a lot of competitors, especially the European and American competitors, already based in China. So we decided that let's take a bet on India, and for us it's definitely worked out. So our business in India, we bought a small company with 20 people in it. It had like 200,000 euros worth of turnover. It's now 220 people with more than 10 million euros worth of turnover. So fortunately for us, our bet paid off. Also, a couple of years ago, we started an office in Germany that's purely sales and service. What we realized was that there's a big cultural difference between how we pitch a project and how we approach a customer from a South African perspective and a European perspective, and we wanted to change that and be a little bit more European. So that's why we set up a sales and service office in Germany. So when we approach a customer, we can now approach a customer in German, in French, or whatever the country is, or whatever the language is, and there's a difference in culture in how you approach a customer and convince a customer to buy a production line. So that's one of the reasons why we set up the sales and service. Service is obvious because obviously when we install a production line, we need to support it. And now more recently, about a year and a half ago, we started an office in the USA, and that's purely a service office at the moment, on the way to being a sales office. Something that we're very proud of is that we export more than 95% of the production lines we produce in South Africa. So fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, our South African business is relatively flat. There's been minimal growth, which is definitely indicated by the GDP numbers that we've had over the last couple of years. So 10 years ago, we adopted a strategy to try and develop the machines in such a way and to a specific standard that would be accepted on a global scale. So as a result of that, I'll show you the turnover graph just now. We've managed to where we are today, where 95% of the machines that we design and build are exported around the world. So, and there is no particular location, so everywhere from Brazil, Mexico, USA, Germany, Spain, Portugal, wherever there's an automotive hub, I'm pretty sure that we've got some machine built in PE running some component there. So we're pretty proud of that. This is the turnover graph that I wanted to share with you guys. So last year we had a 56 million euro turnover. So the numbers are in euros. And the blue graph is our overall turnover over the number of years. So you can see we had a rapid growth. And that's in 2010-11 where we decided to actually make the machines to an international standard that they would be accepted in Germany. And that was the target. And then you can see the red line is our export turnover. So the moment we managed to break into one customer, 2011, 2012, through lots of hard sweat and tears, literally hard sweat and tears, and some blood along the way. Fortunately for us, it actually broke a massive barrier for us, and people then accepted that, okay, maybe we can buy a machine from South Africa. And so you can see the red graph is the turnover from an export perspective. What I wanted to share with you is a little bit about, as I mentioned, some new things in this digital world. But before I jump to digital world, there's a lot of talk about electric vehicles. And as I explained earlier, we do engine, axle, differential, and catalytic converter. So if the whole world changed tomorrow to electric vehicles, we wouldn't have a business because none of the production lines would be required anymore. So it's very important for us to obviously stay ahead and understand what's happening in this electric car space. There is some realities to what's actually happening on the ground, and it's all in the numbers. So just to give you guys some perspective, globally the world sells and produces about 100 million vehicles a year. That's passenger vehicles, not including commercial vehicles. And around 3% of those are termed electric vehicles, but the overwhelming majority of those are hybrids. So there's very few full electric vehicles actually on the market at the moment. So in order to go from that 1%, that's assumed 1% of full electric cars currently being sold, to even 50% is a massive, massive growth. The supply chain would have to change. So it's not going to be as quick as what I think the media portrays, but it's certainly something that's on its way. And I think the key indicator is that, in last week, two massive organizations released their fully electric cars. So Porsche have released a Tesla competitor, which is a really amazing car. It charges to 80% in 20 minutes, which is amazing. And that's one of the negatives of a Tesla. And this week, VW announced their low-cost $35,000 to $40,000 electric vehicle. That's to also compete with the Model 3 of the Tesla. So when you see big organizations like VW, Porsche, and obviously we know that BMW and Daimler, Toyota are following suit, there's definitely something going on. So we have to be cognizant of what's going on. We are obviously way too small to try and influence anything, but what we have to do is stay ahead. So what we've done is we've also deliberately targeted a number of electric vehicle projects, and some of them not as popular as a Porsche. And the first one was the world's first electric tuk-tuk we did in India. So this is a short video clip of the production line we designed and built, designed in South Africa, built in India actually, of a tuk-tuk production line in India. Hence the Indian music, obviously. And that's the world's first white guy driving an electric tuk-tuk. So that's the battery module. So inside there's all the batteries and the electronics that actually are used to drive the vehicle. And what's very interesting is designed and built in India by Mahindra. So the vehicle is actually a completely Indian vehicle. They got massive funding from the government to actually do that. Anyone that's been to India knows the impact a tuk-tuk has on the environment. They have millions and millions of tuk-tuks scooting around the whole country. So I'll talk to you a little bit about virtual reality in a bit, but the whole line was also designed in virtual reality, so the customer could actually walk through their production line before we built it, but I'll get to that as part of the digital services. Another very interesting project, just to try and emphasize the point of that change is coming. So Zoox is a Silicon Valley startup. They have received around $800 million worth of startup funding to produce a completely autonomous, and that means no steering wheel in the car. They don't even call it a car, they call it a robot, taxi. So it's a vehicle that's trying to compete with Uber. So you would basically stand outside, go onto their application, say that you want to get from the stadium to the airport, and this vehicle arrives and you get in, there's no driver in it, and it drops you at the airport. Sounds a little far-fetched, but the laws in California do allow autonomous driving. You have to have a lucid driver. There's a lot of videos of Teslas being driven around by people sleeping, which is against the law, but at the moment they're busy lobbying to change the law that you don't even need a driver in the car. And they are safe enough, and there's enough technology around to allow that. And the crazy thing is, if you asked me a year and a half ago, would a small PE-based organization be building a production line for a small or a startup in Silicon Valley, I would have said no chance. But here we are today, and this is the little video clip from Bloomberg News on that project that they're busy with.
Waymo, the Google self-driving car project, Cruise Automation, Daimler, Baidu, Uber, and Lyft.
Zoox is different. Its rivals are adding self-driving technology to existing cars. Meanwhile, Zoox is making a new type of vehicle for the self-driving age. Basically, Zoox is making a robot, and its early incarnation looks like the love child of the Matrix, Mad Max, and Transformers franchises.
It wasn't enough to just solve the technology. You need a product and you need a business that makes sense. And I hadn't seen that in any other company until I met Tim, and he shared his high-level vision for what Zoox could be.
And that vision is a system of completely autonomous robotic vehicles that can be summoned just like a Lyft, or, dare I say it, an Uber.
We have a very clear vision of Zoox, which is that AI AI and mobility will take us out of the age of the automobile and into the next mobility age, which for us is robotics, autonomous transportation.
Grab a little bit to the right.
These are very unique vehicles. They're designed in a way that would only make sense if they're going to be fully autonomous. The powertrains are designed for full autonomy. They're fully redundant. They have dual high voltage batteries. They have dual low voltage architectures. You can see they're rigged with compute sensors. They can drive without any human intervention. This is VH4. This is VH5. Do you want to go for a ride?
Yeah, I do.
All right, jump in.
Zoox has placed cones on the tarmac. The robot is going to drive out and try to dodge them. But I get to do the whole test sitting backwards, because Tim thought it would be funny.
Keyboard holder. Time to meet my robot maker.
And with one swift keystroke, I give complete control of my life over to an AI.
That really doesn't get old, man. It's like being on a ride at Disney.
These AI robots crank through the course at 45 miles per hour, and the VH5 is set to rip through it at a delightful 75 miles per hour.
We can choose all-wheel steering, two-wheel steering, crab steering, dual motors, and then we have direction.
I like the crab steering.
So that's a pretty interesting project that we're busy with, and so we're designing and building the production line for these guys currently on our shop floor at the moment. So just to illustrate the point again, if you said to us 18 months ago, would we be working for a Silicon Valley company that got $800 million worth of startup funding, we would say no chance. But because our typical customers are VW and they make engines and they make axles, that doesn't mean there aren't opportunities to do other things. So just along with the theme of this digital services, I just want to switch presentations to show you what our thoughts are around this digital services. Sorry, I hate standing still. That makes me more comfortable. So I can put my hand in my pocket and I feel a little more comfortable. So from our perspective, I think we don't often like patting ourselves on the back to say, listen, well done, congratulations, and you've done all of these things. What we've always tried to do is understand what's next, where are our risks, and what do we need to do to actually go forward as a business. And one of the important things that we've identified is that we right now employ globally 650 people. Our turnover is 56 million euros. And in order for us to grow our business, if we continue to do more of the same, we would have to really grow the number of people that we have in our business around the world. And any of you guys that have engineers working for you, trying to manage 400 engineers is not an easy task. And they're really expensive, so we have a high risk in trying to make sure we build a sustainable business. So the question that we ask ourselves is, how do we build a sustainable business? How do we actually make sure that tomorrow is okay and that we can continue to grow? So we've fortunately arrived at that point where everyone's talking about the fourth industrial revolution. So there's a lot of marketing is being done for us, but without any cost, about this idea of digitizing a factory. But I just want to take a few steps back, or maybe a few years back, to talk about where does this fourth industrial revolution idea and concept come from. And it's a very simple story. 7 or 8 years ago, the Fraunhofer Institute, which is the German equivalent of the CSIR, pretty much, the research institute, they were tasked to find out why is German manufacturing costs going up. It costs more and more to manufacture in Germany, so they're losing more and more manufacturing projects to Eastern Europe. We've lost more. Germany have lost more and more business to Eastern Europe, to China, India, obviously some of it to South Africa as well, purely because their manufacturing costs keep going up. So they did this massive research exercise, and they came up with some very simple answers. It's obviously cost of labor in Germany is going up. But then they started asking, why is the cost of labor in Germany going up? And the outcome is pretty simple. The reason why labor costs in Germany go up is 3 main reasons. Number one, they have an older workforce that works much longer. So people work until 70 years old. They're a very healthy country, so people can work much longer. The cost of retirement is much higher than what it was and what they planned for, so people have to work much longer. So you have 70-year-old operators working on a production line, and if you've been working for 40 years, the increases that you've got every year means that a 70-year-old operator versus a 25-year-old operator that adds the same value to the product costs much more for a much older person. That's the one reason. The second reason is people in Germany work or start to work much later in life, so they study longer, they get highly qualified, which means that they want to earn more money when they start working. It's pretty normal. And the main reason, the biggest factor of all, is that they have a decreasing population. So if you look at the size of population from 15 to 20, it's significantly smaller than the population from 45 to 50. So it means they have much less people coming into the workforce, and if you have a lower supply and the demand goes up, means price goes up. It's a simple equation. So there's not enough people to actually do the work that they've currently got to do, because there's just the population's getting smaller. So that's why the solutions that they've come up with, and this so-called, they called it Industry 4.0, it's now evolved to the fourth industrial revolution, is centered around taking people off production line, getting rid of people, because it makes sense. There are no people to actually do the work, so you have to become competitive, you have to find solutions around that. And so there's lots of talk about automation, getting people off production lines. But even more than that, I think the impact of automation is the so-called third industrial revolution, where blue-collar workers were losing their jobs to robots. I think the biggest impact of the fourth industrial revolution is not going to be production lines. That's always been the case, where people automate to try and get people out of a production line. It's going to be white-collar workers. So if you do a data capture job, if you do a repetitive task, all of those jobs are going to be taken up by, and I heard the term the other day, white-collar robots. So people are going to lose their jobs that, not on the production line, but people that do repetitive tasks will start to lose their jobs. But I think the context has to be understood, in that the problems that are experienced. Oh, now sorry. The challenges that are experienced from a European perspective are that there aren't enough people, so the solution makes sense to get rid of people. From a South African perspective, it's the opposite. And an African perspective, and many third world countries, we have an oversupply of people, so trying to get rid of people doesn't make sense. So I think we have to understand what our problems are and find solutions around that. So what I wanted to share with you today is this term called Africa 4.0. And it doesn't have to necessarily be Industry 4.0 or the ideas that everybody else around the world has. It has to be our ideas and solutions to our problems. And I want to illustrate through 2 or 3 examples of how trying to solve an African problem can result in a clever idea, and that idea can be exportable around the world. So I just want to talk about our approach to digitizing a factory and some of the problems we've tried to solve from a South African perspective. So the picture that you see on the screen is a typical production line. You have the different people on a production line. You have operators, the quality people, maintenance manager, and all the different people involved in the production line. So our approach to this digital world is, how do we try and make those individuals more efficient at what they do, starting from the operator all the way up to the manager. So I just want to share with you 2 examples. First one is the operator. So one thing that we did and realized 12, 13 years ago when we were building a production line for VW, it was an engine line, we learned that the minimum requirement to work on a production line at VW is that you have to have matric. And if you have matric, it is assumed that you can read an instruction and follow that instruction to assemble an engine. But any person, even a qualified engineer, reads an instruction and tries to build an engine, will not get it right. So what we realized was that people are not trained or skilled enough to actually read the instruction and build an engine. So what we said was, why don't we just show the operator pictures? So they don't even need to know how to read. Why don't we just show them an animation process of how to build the engine? So this is an engine, an illustration of that animated work instruction. This is a screen grab of a production line we've done for Audi in India. And you can see the animated process that the operator would go through, so they simply just follow the pictures. And we tried to make it so that you can customize it depending on the society that you're in, and I think the right word is society. So in India, people would view pictures and the icons and the indicators very differently to the way South Africans would, and very different to the way Chinese people would. So by allowing it to be flexible and adding whatever picture you want in there, you can make it customizable to the society that you actually work in. So we tried to solve a South African problem many years ago. For example, the yellow square means scan. So every time you see a yellow square, you pick up the yellow scanner and you can scan the barcode. So simple intuitive ideas like that we did and tried to create to solve the South African issue where operators couldn't follow the instructions, has now evolved into a product that we've developed, a software product that we've developed that we now sell more often to first world countries than we do to third world countries. And we were wondering why. So we did a project for a customer in Germany where they wanted exactly the same thing. They wanted to show the operator pictures. We didn't argue with them because we obviously got business out of that. But then when we delivered the line, we asked the guy, why did you want these pictures? You've got these ISO procedures with the work instructions that you follow. And the guy answered very simply, is because people follow pictures. Humans are visual. So you would read words, visualize it, and then execute it. So now we've taken the words part out of it. You just simply follow the picture. And that's an example of where we found a South African problem, a South African challenge. We used our initiative to try and solve that problem for a South African situation that we now export more than we do sell in South Africa. As an example of an opportunity there is around, so that's an example of where we tried to help the operator. I just want to give you one other example on the same Audi project where we gave the operator these augmented reality glasses. Perfect. And the reason why we gave them the glasses was because you can see behind the shoulder is that animated work instruction, which is completely useless because they can't see the screen. So what we did was we gave the operator all the information in those augmented reality glasses, so now they don't need the screen at all. What that also resulted in was we were not constrained by the position of the screen. So all the fixtures and sub-assembly stations around the production line were optimized now for walking distance and not constrained by the position of the screen. So all the operators here now would walk 20 to 30% less than what a typical operator would because they're constrained by the screen, as an example.